Rubin from eSwiss Healing and Performance. Today I want to talk to you about an interesting topic. This affects millions and millions of Americans all the time, and it's urinary incontinence. We're talking about men and women. This is an issue. We see this, I would say, 1 out of every 2 women that come into our clinic, whether they've had a baby or not, have urinary incontinence issue. And of course, this, for anyone, male or female, this isn't a comfortable situation. Emotionally and mentally, it's a huge stress. And, sexually, it's a huge stress. So let's look at some of the statistics of urinary incontinence before we go any further. I'm going to read you some statistics from the web here, from the Mayo Clinic. And they're pretty astounding. There's 13 million cases in the U.S. per year of urinary incontinence. Twice as many men in the U.S. have twice as many women in the U.S. than men actually are diagnosed with urinary incontinence. This estimated that 35% of women over 65 years of age and older, 65 years of age or older have urinary incontinence, and an estimated 20% of women under the age of 65 have urinary incontinence. We could keep going. There was another study by Nygaard et al., and he actually did research to show that 37% of women by the age of 47 years old actually have urinary incontinence. And in the U.S., some crazy statistics, the $16.3 billion per year, and this was in 2001, $16.3 billion a year spent on healthcare for urinary incontinence. Now, what does that mean? We don't know if that means on medication. We don't know if that means on pads. But I can tell you this, it doesn't mean it was used on therapy, because I've never worked with anyone that gets results with urinary incontinence from therapy, the right therapy, physical therapy. Most of them don't know how to do it, and at the same time, we're too ashamed to actually do the right exercises to get in there, right? To actually release some of the tissue if they had an episiotomy, or work on the pelvic floor, and that's what needs to be done. So let's look at the anatomy of this. And I might get a little technical. I'm going to read some stuff, but you got to. You have a cranial diaphragm. You have a thoracic diaphragm. You also have a pelvic diaphragm. And this is super important. That helps with defecation. It helps with respiration. Helps with urination. Helps pumping the viscera and keeping them mobile, keeping fluids moving. And on and on and on. So let's look at the pelvic diaphragm. We'll figure out what it is. The pelvic diaphragm is a muscular sling that supports the organs of the pelvis. It's located at the bony floor of the pelvis and includes the parietal pelvic fascia, basically fascia. The main muscles of this region are called the levator ani, you've heard of that one probably, and the coccygeus muscles, which lay horizontally on the pelvic floor. When combined, they form the pelvic diaphragm and are closely related to each other to the deep fascia of the perineum and with the fibrous coverings of the pelvic organs. There are 3 parts of the levator ani, the iliococcygeus, the pubococcygeus, and the puborectalis. All these form a sling or a hammock or the pelvic diaphragm that actually help, with defecation, keeping it in, letting it out, and urination, keeping it in, letting it out, as well as holding the viscera organs in and supporting the organs so they don't hang down and push into the pelvic floor, inhibit them, leading to defecation and urination. You also have other muscles such as the pubovaginalis, specific nerves, fascia, circulatory systems. All this make up the pelvic diaphragm. And if there's any issues with the pelvic diaphragm, if there's any issues with the pelvic fascia, let's say all these people out there want to, do myofascial release and stretch the fascia and all this jazz. Well, the problem is if you're not well hydrated, the fascia actually gets stuck. And think about this, in the pelvic area, you have all these organs, you have tons of nerves, tons of muscles. We also have tons of fascia, tons of this iliac fascia. If any of this fascia is dehydrated, it's actually going to get stuck to the organs. And think about this. If you have dehydration, just one of the reasons, and you have this fascia getting stuck to the muscles or getting stuck to the organs, it could create a torsion in the pelvis or create a torsion in the muscles, which can frequently give you the urge to always go to the bathroom. So postural issues are super huge to look at when you're talking about urinary incontinence. But there's some other major issues. There's many types of urinary incontinence. There's overflow. There's stress-induced. There's many different types, right? The bottom line is you're urinary incontinent. You want to fix it. So one of the major reasons I found women are urinary incontinent are obesity, or men. Complete obesity. This can actually create inflammation of the prostate in men. But if the organs are hanging down because you've stretched out the very muscles that hold these in, you've stretched out the pelvic diaphragm, you stretched out the TVA, all these organs actually hang down and push into one another. Same thing, they push into the pelvic floor, inhibit the pelvic floor, so now you can't actually use the muscles that clamp the urethra or hold the urine in, so you always have that urge to go to the bathroom. So if you're obese and you have excess weight in front of you and you're trying to fix this urinary incontinence, you're not going to, because the very thing that's causing it, you're not working on it. So nutrition and lifestyle principles that we teach, a holistic lifestyle, go to our website, listen to more our YouTube clips, but that's super, super important. There's other things like autoimmune disease like interstitial cystitis, prostatitis, bacterial infections. All these things can cause urinary incontinence. Another huge one that we see, and it's more common in women, of course, is birth. More women in birth are getting episiotomies. It's left and right. It's when they cut through the pelvic floor so the baby fits out. Bottom line is, if you're going to tear, let it tear. Don't cut it, because if you're not going to tear, you're creating dysfunction. They cut through the pelvic floor. They weaken these muscles. The pelvic floor is on the same neurological loop as your transverse abdominis and diaphragm, which is part of your core muscles. That makes more sense to you guys. The core prevents shearing, compression, and torsion in the low back, but it actually helps to pull the organs in. So if you cut through the pelvic floor, you've destabilized the very organs that prevent low back pain, prevent any issues with the low back. You cut through the muscles that hold the organs up and create that sling and help with urination and defecation. And you you cut through the very thing that holds the organs in so they don't hang down and create pressure and constantly push on the bladder. And you see this a lot in women that get hysterectomies, because when they do hysterectomies, they go in, they cut certain muscles in the pelvic floor to take out the specific organ. Well, that actually deactivates the muscles that actually help you with urination and defecation. So you're seeing more and more women with urinary incontinence. Well, what do? Well, the first thing is, if you had episiotomy, find someone that can do this, or do it yourself. You need to get in there and release that fascia as best as you can by just, almost like you have a bead in your hand and just working it. You can use some coconut oil, rosehip oil. You need to do that every day to work through the fascia, because that fascia is sticky, and if it sticks to other muscles and organs, bottom line is nothing's going to happen. At the same token, if there's a roadblock in the muscle is inhibited from the central nervous system, the brain doesn't recognize it's there. It's like a roadblock, so you need to work on it. The second thing you need to do is do Kegel exercises. Men lift your testicles, women do a Kegel. You're basically contracting the perineum. It's like holding in your pee and stopping and starting it. You need to do that. I usually have clients do that for 2 to 3 weeks every single day, 3 times a day. Some people can only do it once a day, but I usually have them do 20 to 30 reps. Another thing you can do, I actually incorporate this with the second exercise, and only if they can do the first exercise, is just contracting the glutes. So once they can just contract the perineum and just contract the glutes without contracting the perineum, I actually have them get, and this sounds a little kinky, I actually have them go to a porn store. I have them get anal beads or Benoit balls. Something that they can actually stick a small fishing weight onto, or attach a fishing weight. And I'll have them stick part of it into their vagina, or men, I'll have them tie it to their testicles. And I'll have them do the Kegel exercises with that to strengthen the pelvic floor. Sounds a little crazy, sounds a little kinky, but it's been used for thousands of years by Taoists, and it's a technique that I've used that's worked well with women. You're not tying on 5-pound weights. You're getting little fishing weights. And you want to use these anal beads or Benoit balls because you can stick part of it in, the rest hang out. And you're putting it in the vagina, or men, you're just tying it to the testicles. And the third thing, we usually, after they can do the perineum and do the glutes, and then do the perineum and glutes together with a weight, you incorporate that with more open chain loaded exercises like your primal movement patterns, like squatting, pushing, bending, rotating, things like that. You incorporate the respiration and activating the perineum and glutes with those exercises. So, of course, cleaning up your diet, and there's a lot more that you can do to help these people. But this is just a tidbit of information to let you know that you can fix this problem. You have to focus on nutrition. You have to focus on the fascia. You have to look at bodily distortions, bacterial infections. You have to look if they have fascia restrictions from episiotomy. And you have to strengthen the right muscles. Just pulling in your belly button and try to do core exercise is not going to work. You have to get specific and isolate the pelvic floor. Then you integrate that with everything else in movement patterns in everyday life. So hopefully you've learned something. It's a lot of information. I'm talking fast. I'm out of here.